Welcome to another deep dive. You've sent over some really fascinating stuff for this one. The Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and the Testament of Solomon, ready to explore a world of angels and giants and ancient prophecies.
These texts, while outside the traditional biblical canon, were very influential. Back in ancient times, they really wrestle with these big questions about good and evil, humanity's connection to the divine, and the consequences of choices. Choices made by both humans and these supernatural beings.
Yeah, it's kind of like peeking into a forbidden library, isn't it? So we have the Book of Enoch, attributed to the biblical patriarch, the one who walked with God and was taken up to heaven. It's full of these really intense visions and prophecies, and it gives us this unique perspective on angels. Then there's the Book of Giants, which was discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It really dives deep into that story of the fallen angels, the Watchers, the ones who decide to mate with human women. And as a result, they create this whole race of giants.
And what's really interesting is how the Book of Giants actually expands on the Genesis account.
Yeah.
It gives us names, it gives these giants personalities, it really turns them into these characters in this cosmic drama. There's even the suggestion that they pass down this forbidden knowledge to humans, which adds this whole other layer to the story of humanity's fall from grace.
Wow. And then we have the Testament of Solomon, which ties everything together. This one explores Solomon's encounters with these different demons, some of whom are actually identified as spirits of these very giants that we've been talking about. So it connects the ancient rebellion of the Watchers to this ongoing struggle against evil that we see throughout history.
Exactly. It really suggests a kind of continuity of conflict, like the consequences of those early transgressions are still playing out, even in Solomon's time.
Wow. Okay, so let's start with the fall of the Watchers. The Book of Enoch describes these 200 angels descending to Mount Hermon, led by Azazel and Shemhaza. It's this incredibly powerful image, but there's so much to unpack here. What makes this act so significant in the context of this ancient worldview?
It's all about transgression, but on this cosmic level, it's not just any angels. We're talking about Watchers, these beings who are entrusted with very specific roles in the divine order. And by leaving their designated posts and engaging in these forbidden relationships with humans, they violate a fundamental boundary, and it ends up disrupting the entire balance of the universe.
And the consequences are huge. The Book of Enoch talks about these giants being born, violence spreading everywhere, this corruption taking root. And ultimately, we see God's judgment in the form of a devastating flood. It's like we're seeing a picture of a world spiraling into chaos, a world where the lines between heaven and earth have become, dangerously blurred.
And the Book of Giants picks up on that theme. It portrays the giants not only as physically imposing, but also as these corrupting influences. It's as if their existence itself just throws the world into this disarray.
Right. There are so many different interpretations of the Watchers' motivations. What do you find most compelling? Was it simply lust, or was there something more at play here, a deeper desire that led them to this, transgression?
Well, the texts themselves are a little bit ambiguous, but they hint at this fascination with humanity. Maybe even a desire to share knowledge or to connect in ways that were forbidden. It really raises some interesting questions about the nature of temptation, the limits of free will, and the potential consequences when you overstep those boundaries, not just for the individuals involved, but for all of creation.
It's a story that resonates even today, doesn't it? This idea of crossing boundaries, the allure of the forbidden, and those unintended consequences that can ripple out.
Absolutely. The fall of the Watchers can be seen as a cautionary tale. It reminds us that boundaries are important, that respecting the order of things is crucial, and to always consider those potential ripple effects of our actions.
Now let's shift our focus to Enoch himself. He's not just a bystander in all of this. God chooses him to be a messenger, a prophet, to deliver warnings to the fallen angels and to humanity. What does his story tell us about the nature of prophecy and those challenges of being this conduit between the divine and the human?
Enoch's journey is fascinating. He goes from being a righteous man walking with God to becoming this intermediary figure, entrusted with these divine messages and actually witnessing cosmic events. His encounters with the Watchers, their pleas for forgiveness, even his own struggle to convey God's judgment. It really explores the prophet's role.
It seems like such a heavy burden to bear, To know the fate that awaits, to have to deliver these pronouncements even when you're confronted with the remorse of those who have fallen.
Exactly. It speaks to the weight of prophecy, that tension between compassion and duty. And, sometimes the prophet's in this uncomfortable position, this messenger between realms.
And then there are Enoch's visions of heaven, these breathtaking descriptions of the divine realm that fill the Book of Enoch. What do those visions mean? What do they tell us about how ancient people understood the cosmos and humanity's place in it?
Well, they're fascinating not just for their imagery, but also for what they reveal about the ancient worldview. They offer us this glimpse into a realm beyond our comprehension, a realm of light, fire, and countless angels attending the throne of God. It reminds us of the vastness of creation and the power of the divine.
And what about all the astronomical knowledge that we see in the Book of Enoch? How does that fit into this blend of prophecy and cosmology?
It's pretty remarkable. Even though Enoch's descriptions are couched in this very symbolic language, they actually reflect this surprisingly accurate understanding of how the celestial bodies move. He talks about solstices, equinoxes, lunar phases. He even describes the precession of the equinoxes, which takes thousands of years to observe.
It's amazing to think that ancient people had this level of astronomical knowledge. It really challenges our assumptions about what they understood scientifically and how they connected with the cosmos.
It does. It really does. And what's even more intriguing is how this astronomical knowledge is interwoven with Enoch's prophecies. The stars aren't just physical occurrences, they're full of meaning. They're seen as signs. It's a holistic view, where the heavens and earth are connected, and studying the stars is like a pathway to understanding the divine.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we've lost something in our modern view of the universe, this sense of interconnectedness, this sense of finding meaning in those movements in the cosmos.
Perhaps we have. The Book of Enoch invites us to reconsider our relationship with the natural world, to see the universe as this tapestry of meaning where even the stars whisper stories and hold secrets.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the concept of giants. You've sent over some fascinating research on the physical evidence, those ancient reports of giant skeletons, fossilized footprints, even accounts of giant tools and weapons. Why do you think this topic continues to fascinate people, even with all the scientific skepticism surrounding it?
I think it really gets to the core of human curiosity and our fascination with the unknown. And while some of the evidence might be questionable, the fact that giant myths and legends persist across so many different cultures, it suggests there's something about this concept that captures our collective imagination.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people see those stories as pure fantasy, but others believe they point to something more tangible, maybe a distant memory of a time when our understanding of the world was completely different. A time when the lines between myth and reality were just more fluid. What are your thoughts?
It's a fascinating debate. On the one hand, we have to acknowledge that we don't know everything, and that new discoveries could totally change our understanding of the past. But on the other hand, we have to be careful. We have to evaluate the evidence and avoid mistaking speculation for fact.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Being open to possibilities, but also thinking critically and respecting the scientific process.
Exactly. And I think ultimately, regardless of whether we interpret those accounts literally or symbolically, the fact that giant myths and legends persist raises some really interesting questions. Questions about our origins, our relationship to the past, and the power of storytelling.
Okay, now let's dive into the Testament of Solomon. Specifically that idea that the spirits of the giants didn't actually die, that they became demons because they were, part angelic. What's so compelling about this idea? And how does it connect to everything else we've been discussing?
It adds this chilling layer to the whole story because it suggests the consequences of that rebellion, of the Watchers' rebellion, weren't limited to just the flood. These remnants, these demonic spirits, they continue to plague humanity. They represent this lingering darkness from that ancient transgression.
And Solomon, with his divinely granted authority, steps in to confront and bind these spirits. It's such a powerful image, this wise king wielding his power against these malevolent forces.
It's a classic struggle, this righteous figure going up against forces of chaos and darkness.
And it's not just brute force either. The Testament of Solomon emphasizes the power of knowledge, of knowing specific names, symbols, and rituals, all to control these demonic entities.
Yes, it highlights the importance of wisdom and understanding in that confrontation with evil. And it suggests that true power isn't just about physical strength. It's about spiritual insight and the ability to use divine authority.
It's a theme that keeps coming up in all these ancient texts, isn't it? That knowledge can be both a blessing and a curse. A source of power, but also a potential path to destruction.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder, what kind of knowledge did these giants possess? And how did it contribute to their downfall?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one that we're going to explore further in the next part of our deep dive. We'll really delve into the concept of forbidden knowledge, its role in the fall of the Watchers, and those potential consequences of seeking knowledge that's beyond, well, beyond what humans are meant to know.
It's a question that's haunted humanity for ages. What is forbidden knowledge? And what happens when we cross that line?
Yeah, it's like that irresistible urge to look behind the curtain, even when we know we might not like what we find.
Exactly. And the Book of Giants, although it's fragmented, it does offer some clues. It mentions the giants teaching humans things like metallurgy, weapon making, but it also hints at some pretty esoteric knowledge. Astrology, magic, the manipulation of natural forces.
So it wasn't just practical skills, it was about tapping into something deeper, potentially dangerous realms of knowledge. It's almost like the giants, in their rebellion, were trying to unlock these secrets that humans weren't supposed to know.
That's a really important point. The texts seem to suggest that the knowledge itself wasn't inherently evil. It was how it was used. In the hands of the giants, driven by their rebellious nature, it became a tool for destruction.
It's like giving a loaded gun to a child, right? The tool itself isn't good or evil, it's the intent of the user that matters.
Perfect analogy. And this brings us back to the Testament of Solomon. He's able to bind these demonic spirits, those remnants of the giants. It suggests that he had a different kind of knowledge, a spiritual wisdom that allowed him to counteract those forces unleashed by that ancient transgression.
So it's a battle of knowledge in a way. The giants, with their forbidden knowledge, represent chaos, while Solomon, with his divine wisdom, represents order and righteousness.
Exactly. And that dynamic isn't just something from the ancient world. That quest for knowledge, the struggle to use it wisely, the temptation to misuse it. These are themes that we see throughout human history.
Speaking of temptation, the Testament of Solomon doesn't portray Solomon as this all-powerful, perfect figure, right? He faces challenges, he has moments of weakness, even a fall from grace. What do those episodes tell us about his character and the complexities of wielding that kind of spiritual power?
It reminds us that even those blessed with wisdom and divine favor aren't immune to temptation. You know, the Testament of Solomon shows us Solomon making mistakes. He succumbs to desire. He strays from that path of righteousness. It humanizes him, showing that even the wisest can stumble.
And it's interesting how his fall directly affects his ability to control those spirits. Like his spiritual authority is diminished. He becomes vulnerable to their influence.
Yeah, exactly. It really highlights how dynamic spiritual power is. It's not static, it's something you have to earn and maintain through right action and aligning yourself with the divine will. Solomon's story is a cautionary tale. It reminds us that vigilance and spiritual grounding are so important, even for those who seem the most gifted.
It's a valuable lesson, especially in a world that often equates power with dominance and control. The Testament of Solomon shows us that true power is linked to wisdom, humility, and that recognition that even the most righteous among us can fall.
Now, you also had some questions about the Book of Enoch and why it was excluded from the biblical canon. What do you think made it so controversial?
It is a puzzle, isn't it? The Book of Enoch has this unique perspective on angels, prophecy, the cosmos, but it's been pushed aside by so many religious traditions, it makes you wonder what about it was so controversial.
I think it's probably a combination of things. One reason is that it presents a worldview that challenges some established doctrines. The idea of angels mating with humans, those detailed descriptions of fallen angels and demons, that emphasis on forbidden knowledge. These things might have been seen as too radical or disruptive to the prevailing theological ideas of the time.
It's like it introduces a level of ambiguity and complexity that maybe some found unsettling, even threatening.
Exactly. It challenges that clear division between good and evil, heaven and earth. It raises questions about the nature of divine power, the fallibility of those exalted beings, and that potential for chaos to really disrupt the divine order.
And we can't forget about the astronomical knowledge that's presented in the Book of Enoch. It has this view of the cosmos that might have been at odds with the accepted scientific understanding at the time.
That's another crucial point. The Book of Enoch, in its blend of prophecy and cosmology, challenges us to reconsider how ancient people understood the universe. It suggests a level of sophistication that we don't usually associate with ancient cultures. And it opens up the possibility that they were more in tune with the cosmos, more aware of the interconnectedness of everything than we might think.
Yeah, it's like the Book of Enoch gives us a different lens to view the world, one that allows us to see a more holistic, interconnected reality.
Precisely. And maybe that's why it continues to fascinate and intrigue us even today. It challenges our assumptions, it expands our horizons, and it invites us to explore these mysteries of the cosmos with a sense of wonder and curiosity.
So, we've talked about the fall of the Watchers, forbidden knowledge, the complexities of Solomon's story, and why the Book of Enoch might have been pushed aside. But where does all of this leave us? What can we, as modern readers, take away from these ancient texts?
That's the beauty of these texts. They're open to so many different interpretations and applications. On one level, they offer a window into the beliefs and concerns of ancient cultures. We can see how people in the past grappled with questions of good and evil, the nature of the divine, the mysteries of the cosmos.
But they also go beyond their historical context, right?
Absolutely.
Huh.
They deal with themes that are just as relevant today: the allure of forbidden knowledge, the consequences of our choices, that struggle with temptation, the power of wisdom, and the possibility of redemption.
Yeah.
These ancient texts, even though they can be challenging and a little enigmatic at times, offer this incredibly rich tapestry of ideas, images, and narratives. They can really inform our understanding of what it means to be human and our place in the universe.
They remind us that the quest for knowledge has two sides, that power without wisdom is dangerous, and that even those who seem the most righteous can fall.
And they also have this message of hope. They remind us that even when we face darkness and despair, there's always the possibility of redemption, of returning to a path of righteousness, of finding meaning in a world that can often seem chaotic.
Those are some really valuable lessons to think about, especially as we navigate the complexities of our modern world.
It's like they hold up this mirror, reflecting our own anxieties and aspirations that haven't changed all that much over time. They remind us that being human, it's about seeking knowledge, grappling with power, and ultimately wanting something more, something that goes beyond those earthly limitations.
And it's interesting because even though these texts often paint a pretty bleak picture of humanity, the fall of the Watchers, humans being corrupted, these demonic forces being unleashed, there's still this glimmer of hope there, this persistent belief that things can be redeemed, that order can be restored, that we can return to a state of righteousness.
It's a powerful theme, and it's one that we see in a lot of religious and spiritual traditions. Despite the fact that both humans and angels mess up, there's this sense that the divine order, even though it's been disrupted, it can be fixed.
Yeah, and even in the Testament of Solomon, where we see Solomon struggling with his own flaws and giving in to temptation, there's this feeling that he learns from his mistakes, that he ultimately finds his way back to that path of righteousness. It's almost as if the text is saying, hey, even when you stumble, even when you stray, you can always find your way back.
It's a story about resilience, about recognizing that we're not perfect, but still striving for something better. It's about that constant struggle against darkness, both inside and outside of ourselves, but never giving up on the possibility of redemption.
It resonates so deeply, you
Yeah.
know, especially in a world that's so full of conflict and corruption and despair.
These texts remind us that the battle between good and evil, it's not just some old myth, it's happening right now in our own lives, our communities, on a global scale. They give us a way to understand that struggle and to find hope even when things are dark.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to that question we talked about earlier. Why do you think these texts, even with their incredible stories and thought-provoking themes, why were they left out of the Bible? What made them so controversial?
It's a question that has puzzled scholars for a long time, and I don't think there's one easy answer. Part of it might be because they challenge some of the core beliefs that were already in place. Angels mating with humans, detailed descriptions of demons, that whole idea of forbidden knowledge. These things could have been seen as dangerous, maybe even heretical, to some religious leaders.
Like they bring in too much ambiguity, too much gray area into a worldview that wants black and white answers.
Right. They complicate the narrative, ask some uncomfortable questions, and force us to face the messy realities of human nature. And maybe, for some people, that level of uncertainty was just too much.
But isn't that part of what makes these texts so fascinating? They don't shy away from the tough questions, from the darker aspects of human experience, from the possibility that things might not be what they seem. They encourage us to be more open-minded, to explore our beliefs and values and our place in the universe with a fresh perspective.
I think that's a big part of why they continue to resonate with people. They give us a glimpse into a world where the lines between the human and the divine are blurred, where good and evil are constantly battling, and where the pursuit of knowledge can lead to amazing discoveries, but also destruction.
And maybe by exploring these ancient mysteries, by asking these timeless questions, we can understand not just the past, but ourselves and the world we're living in right now.
Exactly. They hold up a mirror to our anxieties, our hopes, our struggles. They remind us that the human journey is full of contradictions, darkness and light, despair and hope.
And in the end, they leave us with more questions than answers, which, in a way, is a sign of any truly great work of literature or spiritual exploration.
It's about the journey, isn't it? Being willing to go into the unknown, face uncertainty, and embrace the mysteries that are all around us.
Beautifully put. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and the Testament of Solomon. We hope you enjoyed exploring these ancient mysteries with us, and that it's made you curious to learn even more. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.